Finally, we are getting to talk about Michigan's turn at Big Ten Media Days. This is going to be at least the first where we discuss it. Here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Sunday, part 2. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And part of the big reason why we didn't have the immediate recaps on Friday or Saturday was because I was the man on the ground. If you are a longtime listener, watcher, you know I'm allergic to field turf. And yet, I was on field turf for 16 hours. So, thus, I was in a coma. So, but anyway, let's get to the what happened on Thursday. There are lots of little things to take away, and I don't know yet if there's anything groundbreaking. I'm still parsing over everything. I know you're gonna probably ask us, hey, you were there. How are you still parsing through things? Well, I can't be everywhere at once. I am one person. So I set up like a recorder over at Chris Jenkins. I set up video at both Blake Corum and Mike Sainristil. And while I've watched all of Blake Corum, I've probably halfway through Mike Sainristil. I've barely done anything with Chris Jenkins except for the questions that I asked him or Mike Sainristil. But obviously I was part of all of the Jim Harbaugh stuff. I only got one question in. Before we even get to, I think, the big things that kind of came out of it, because I don't think there was anything necessarily groundbreaking when it came to Michigan or Jim Harbaugh. But I mean, obviously going into it, I mean, he was the main character, like I said earlier. He certainly had the biggest crowd of anybody. It's just such an event, and while it does feel like it weirdly, I feel like Big Ten Media Days was a little bit smaller in a weird way, despite there being more familiar faces in some ways, right? Because you had NBC and CBS people there. That's not been the case. Joel Klatt was still there. Unfortunately, we did not get our one-on-one. I spoke to him briefly, and he's like, "Yeah, let's do it." And then I never saw him again for the rest of the day. So it just sometimes doesn't work out, I guess. Nonetheless, I mean, there's just like a lot of faces and everything, and I think that's a really cool part of it, is just kind of everyone coming together. I'm sure it's the same if you're at like SEC Media Days, and to a lesser extent, probably Pac-12 and Big 12. That I feel like they probably don't quite have as many big names as, and because, I mean, you've got the bigger markets, I think, covering a lot of these things. Maybe Pac-12, I know that's going to certainly change with USC and UCLA coming in. But I just think that it's just such an interesting event, and I both look forward to and also am leery of going to Big Ten Media Days every year. Part because, why am I leery? I know you're probably asking. Well, it's because of the big takeaway that I'm going to give you, number one, out of the Michigan side. Jim Harbaugh asked a million times over about the NCAA violations, even though right away, on the stage, there's 2 sessions for him. He's got his 15-minute like press conference, and then they have what they call the podium sessions, which are, I mean, it's not really a podium. You're sitting at a table, but where they go for 45 minutes. Jim Harbaugh said he can't talk about any of the NCAA violation stuff whatsoever in the press conference section, and then got asked in every which way that a person can ask about it again at the podium sessions. And that to me is like, okay, I think we kind of knew. I think I might have even said on Wednesday's show of you can probably expect that he'll say he can't talk about it. Yet, you still get the, all right, well, you can't talk about it. Well, who would be the coach if you're suspended? Again, I can't talk about it. Or what do you tell your players? How are they reacting? Again, I can't talk about it. It's just like a consistent, like, I understand for some people it's to, get him to react one way or another. I think there's a reason why none of these questions really came. Only once did it really come from anyone inside the Michigan media. Inside of the people who cover Michigan all the time, and it's by someone who is relatively newer to the beat. Anyone else who's been on the beat for more than a year, they looked at it and said, okay, he said he can't talk about it. Well, That's it. He's not going to fall for it. There's nothing you're going to be able to say to him that's suddenly going to make him be like, oh, you know what? I will talk about it, but I'll be in this type of vein. Now, that said, he did say, like, he said that he's not ashamed of his actions, and he wishes he could lay it all out there for everybody. That doesn't really seem to me like someone who feels like they're guilty of anything. Doesn't feel like they're guilty of lying to the NCAA. Again, I don't recall it. It's hard to prove that someone does in fact recall. I don't recall what happened on Saturday. That was yesterday. I don't recall what happened on Friday. It was pretty much in a coma. So, with that said, I don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility that Jim Harbaugh does not recall. And even though to some people it might seem like, how does he not recall committing an NCAA violation by buying that kid, whatever. How many times you go through life just making, with whether it's actual transactions or just kind of doing life, and you just don't think about what you're doing. You just do it, right? It's for a guy that's got millions of dollars. It would make sense. He's like, oh yeah, I'll take care of that. And kind of just not thinking. Kind of in the same way that sometimes you have NCAA violations where, mostly with assistant coaches, where they just are like, oh yeah, we got this recruit coming in, he's really good. Like, of course, like they're just not thinking most of the time. Either they don't know the rules or they're just not thinking. They're not necessarily trying to break the rules. It still broke the rules. Certainly, you can penalize that, but the sheer unbelievability that Michigan will hit harder from, I don't recall, compared to Tennessee and 200 some violations is just unbelievable to me. It's just unbelievable. I know we covered all that on Wednesday, but nonetheless, he does not seem like he has any angst over what happened. And, you can look at it and you can say, all right, there's one of two consequences, or circumstances here. Either he actually feels like he is in the right, or he's a complete and total narcissist. Who knows? Could be either or. Nonetheless, I think that Jim Harbaugh has the right attitude. I personally believe that he's in the right. Again, if he willingly lied, I don't think that that's right. That said, the NCAA incentivizes that, certainly. As long as you don't get caught. But nonetheless, that was kind of the biggest thing. Certainly. There wasn't really anything that I can recall out of the Jim Harbaugh of it all that was just like, wow. Certainly his response to Ryan Day, that was a thing which we'll talk about here in just one moment. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So next time you need parts and accessories, head over to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. So just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that your part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, so what was the other big item for Jim Harbaugh? And then we'll move on to the players and all of that. I do want to actually demur real quick. The fit that the Michigan players had was insane. Blake Corum was easily the most recognizable person there, and he had more people around him, I think, than any other player. Maybe the only one close to it was Marvin Harrison Jr., and I still feel like Blake Corum had a bigger crowd, at least at the outset. I didn't join Marvin Harrison Jr. Because I kind of didn't remember that the players only go for 30 minutes rather than 45. So I just literally missed it because of my own negligence. But I thought that Blake Corum, his State and Liberty suit was just iconic. It was cool. Had his logo on the inside liner. It was like a blue velvet. I mean, it was smooth. Michigan guys also. Now, Chris Jenkins wore a tie, but the other two didn't. Michigan guys, from what I noticed, and I may have missed one or two guys, only ones not wearing ties. Blake Corum, Mike Sainristil, no ties. Just style. Not business, style. Coming in like guys that have a championship mentality. We'll get to that championship mentality here in a moment. But up next here, Jim Harbaugh responded, as did many of the players, about the Ryan Day, the Ohio State, played at a different place in the season. And they responded basically as I would expect, kind of like the players were like, we'll play it whenever. We'll play it week 0. We'll play it right now. You want to play it right now? We're out. We got a field. Let's just do it. It's kind of their mentality. Jim Harbaugh was just kind of like, I don't really have an opinion. Which is the smart thing. Don't be even if you have the opinion that that's something to change, don't be the person that goes out there and says, yeah, we need to change almost 100 years, 90 years of tradition, save for 4 years. Don't be that guy. Don't be the guy who doesn't get it. But I think what was more important than we'll play that any week is talking to the players. I believe it was Blake Corum that was like, listen, we can play it. You want to play it 1 week and then we can play it literally again the next week? Cool. We're good with that. Like, there was no shying away from it, which makes sense. Right? Again, like, I know there was a game in between and it would have been a month plus, but like, Michigan guys wanted Ohio State in the college football playoff. Round 1. They were all about it. They had no doubt we'll do the same thing to them again. But yeah, I think that they have the right mentality. We'll play it whenever you want to play it, but when it comes to like moving it, no opinion. Whatever. That's I think that that's the right response. Now, I hope it's not anyone in the Michigan of it all's opinion to move it. If you don't remember, Dave Brandon got absolutely eviscerated for saying like, yeah, I'd maybe move the game. Same type of scenario, leaders and legends at that time. Got the letters and said, listen, I get it. You didn't get it. Leave it well enough alone. If they play 2 weeks in a row, in my opinion, so be it. We'll see if it happens. But that kind of goes to the next Jim Harbaugh thing, which is when it came to the transfer portal, NIL, and it's kind of, he didn't say this about the Ohio State thing, but I agree with this. Is it really broke? Why are we trying to fix something that we don't even know if it's broke? That I thought was really poignant, right? Because we don't necessarily know if it's broken. Honestly, Michigan is not the one that's benefiting heavily from either the transfer portal or NIL yet. These were things that Jim Harbaugh lobbied for. Transfer portal in particular. He was the one that was out there. So it's kind of why does Congress get involved trying to fix something that we don't even know if it's broke yet? See, Zuri agrees if you can hear that. So I think that is an absolute perfect mentality for him to have. And I think it's not to just agree with him with everything, because I don't agree with him in everything. As if you watch the show, you know. But I think that's the right mentality. When it comes to other things like 16-team playoff, sorry, no, I do not agree with that. I don't want that. I would prefer to keep things kind of more status quo. Keep it nice and special. 4, maybe 6. Make it an exclusive, right? Everything's better when it's exclusive. Facebook was better when it was universities only. Now that every single person and their mom can get on it, and their grandparents and all of that, while it's great to be able to see everyone's content and all of that stuff, wasn't it better when it was exclusive? I mean, that was the whole thing to differentiate from MySpace. It's kind of the same thing with college football playoff. It's just better when it's exclusive. It means something more. When it's 12, when it turns to that and everything, it's not going to mean as much to make the playoffs as much as it does now. To be a 2-time college football playoff participant, that's huge for Michigan. That's huge for Notre Dame. That's huge for Oklahoma. Those are things that other teams can't say. But now it's going to be something that expands, and, I don't agree with that. But speaking of championships, Jim Harbaugh, we asked him about the championship or bust part of it. And he said, you know what? I don't know where that's coming from. He's like, actually, no, I know it's media driven. That's not our mentality. Mentality isn't championship or bust. You know, you can be first, you can be second, you can be third, you can be fourth. Heck, you can even be fifth. Hope you know that he didn't do the Ricky Bobby's dad of it all. But nonetheless, no, he ain't doing the if you ain't first, you're last. But they said basically the goals are still the same. And I think that's not that I think that's the right mentality. I don't necessarily think that's the right mentality. I do think it should be championship or bust. That's personally feeling like if you're going to make the climb. But I understand on a week to week, day to day, and this was something that Mike Sanders still said, our goal isn't overall we need a championship. Our goal is what do we do today? And then tomorrow our goal is what do we do today? And so on and so forth. So I understand where Jim Harbaugh is coming from. I agree a little bit more if you're going to put it the way that Mike Sanders still put it. That's what I think. So I think that is a really good mentality to have. That said, I still think it should be championship or bust, right? Because if not now, when? This is your shot. But I understand. You have to be able to achieve your other goals. Beat Michigan State, beat Ohio State, win the Big Ten, win the national championship. I understand those are all goals. If you get 3 of those goals, but not the 4th one, whichever one that is, you probably feel pretty good, right? You can't necessarily look at it fully championship or bust, because if you're in Ohio State's type territory last year, you go to the college football playoffs, they say they did win the championship. Yeah, that's pretty great. You still got shellacked by Michigan. Michigan goes and gets shellacked by Ohio State, still somehow goes to the championship game and wins it. That's still going to feel like there's something missing. So I get it. You want to achieve all your goals. I just think, and I understand you want to achieve them pretty much in that order. Michigan State, Ohio State, Big Ten, national championship. I guess you do have to go in order for that. That said, it would be beyond a disappointment if they don't at least make it to the national championship game. They have to do that. Otherwise, I do think this season is a failure to some degree. Depends on how it happens. If you don't beat Michigan State, then it's a huge failure. If you don't beat Ohio State, it's a failure, and it's more than a disappointment. But it all depends on what happens from there. Do you beat Ohio State? Still go to the playoffs? Still go to the Big Ten championship? It all depends on what happens with Ohio State. So, yeah, there's a lot of different things that could happen. I do agree with the mentality of day to day. I do agree with the mentality of having to have the individual goals. That said, you have to sit there and set yourself for the highest possible standard. Last thing on that makes sense for Mike Sanders still. He says that when it comes to the national championship, the reason we can't say that it's championship or bust is because none of us have won a national championship. So we don't necessarily know what it takes. All we know what it takes is to get as far as we've gotten. So we're working a little bit extra hard in order to be able to get past that. We'll see if that works. All right, we're going to continue on. I do want to talk about the Mike Valenti comment based off of Mel Tucker and all of that. I know that was the day before. We didn't really get to it too much, I don't think, on Wednesday, if memory serves. So we'll talk about that here in just a moment. I don't want to make a habit out of talking about things Mike Valenti. I don't. But we'll talk about it. I don't necessarily fully see it the same way that everyone else is. I can see why there's some uproar. But first, okay, here's the thing, and I think that we'll tie the Jim Harbaugh comments to this, which I thought were perfect here at the end here. So if you missed it, Mel Tucker basically said that why would you tone it down? You know, I don't want to tone down the rivalry. There's nothing to tone down. We're going to continue to. He didn't necessarily say it exactly like that, but it was clear, you know, that it was, we don't want to, I'm happy with the status quo. So is what it is. So in that interim, as I think we discussed on Wednesday, the Michigan State game, it just for disambiguation, it has not been announced as a night game. I saw a lot of people out there, and I read some things from some colleagues that even the one that was talking to Brett McMurphy with me, I wrote my article before this and had this disambiguation. These are not set in stone. This is basically NBC's wish list. And for some reason, a lot of people didn't get that. Even Mel Tucker, I think, was asked, like, oh, this is set in stone. It's not. It's not set in stone as a night game. It's NBC's wish list. Now, NBC likely, considering that's, I believe, the same weekend as the Ohio State-Penn State game, which is going to be a noon game. The likelihood is NBC will have that shot to put that as a night game. But if, for whatever reason, Ohio State or Penn State end up sucking, if Fox wants to get out of it, they can go ahead and take Michigan State if, like, that's a better game. Probably won't be, but nonetheless, so the reason I bring that part up is because if you didn't hear, Mike Valenti said basically, if you're Michigan fans, don't go to that game. You're going to get batteries thrown at you. Now, he said repeatedly, and this is why I defend him, which is something that I don't do too much, is he said, I don't condone this, but be warned. And you can sit there and say that him making it a cautionary tale is riling up the Michigan State side. I don't think he's speaking out of turn. I do think that that's the fever pitch that this rivalry unfortunately is at. I don't think he's wrong. I think he's saying as a warning, like, that's not going to be a friendly atmosphere for a Michigan fan. Think of all the times that, you've been warned about going to Columbus with your Michigan plates and your Michigan stickers and wearing Michigan gear. Kind of similar, right? I don't think he's threatening Michigan fans. So I do, and I did listen to the segment, so it's not that I'm just reading it secondhand. I really did get it as like, that's not a good environment. I'm just telling you, it's not a good environment. So I do want to defend him on that, because I don't think that was necessarily one of his really bad takes. I don't think that was his bad take of, which we've seen from Jim Comparoni and others out there that acted like the tunnel incident was all Michigan's fault, right? They were asking for it. They shouldn't have been standing there. So I don't think that's what he was saying in this type of thing. I think I think he's accurately saying, like, that's not going to be an environment that you're going to want to be a part of. That said, I think that you should do whatever you want to do, whatever you feel safe doing. I can tell you, I'm going to be there. I'm not afraid to be there, but I won't want to be there. But that has nothing to even do with what happened after last year's game. Not at all. I have come to loathe that week since really 2016. No, not 2016, 2018 forward. That the rivalry's just gotten to be so toxic. Yeah, I don't want to even be there for that. It's just even this last year, well before the tunnel, I was like, that something's going to happen in this. Something bad is going to happen. And I feel like probably something bad's going to happen. Unfortunately, that's just the unfortunate nature of that rivalry at this point. If they make it a night game, it's just going to be all the worse. I think that should be one where, like, the network should be informed and just please be responsible. Be responsible about it. Understand that it can't be handled that way. It just can't be. But I thought, again, I'm going to call this the Jim Harbaugh agreement episode. You know what? That's what we're just going to call it. The Jim Harbaugh agreement episode. I agreed with what he had to say in the when he was asked about Michigan State, because I thought he had the perfect response. Like, what do you think about, Michigan State, and what Mel Tucker said about he doesn't want to tone down the rivalry and all of that. And Jim Harbaugh says, like, oh, it's a rivalry of mutual respect and everything. And then asks, so he says mutual respect, but then he's asked, what do you think that Michigan State has that respect? And he says, it's unknowable for me to know that. Right? Like, that's not That's not how he's described Ohio State. Was it last year coming off of the Heisman stuff and his relationship with Ryan Day? He called their relationship to, congenial and respectful and all of that. And that's after the third base comments and all of that stuff. But Jim Harbaugh says it's unnoble for me to know that, and then drops that he hasn't heard from Mel Tucker since the tunnel incident. Michigan State admitted fault verbally as well as by their actions, right? So it is crazy to me. I understand you don't want to bow to your rival. You don't want to necessarily be Brady Hoke in the steak incident and be groveling. But given Atavian Brown was just sentenced, right? For it last, it ended up just being probation, I believe. But that just happened last week, and he had another thing that happened as well. So people's lives were at stake. I don't want to be hyperbolic, but that was, when someone's out there swinging a helmet that way at someone else's head, someone could die. Tom Izzo and John Beilein managed to be congenial, and when I can't remember, I think it was when Beilein had his quadruple bypass surgery, one of the first people he heard from was Tom Izzo. Bo and Woody were best friends. The Michigan State side and the Michigan side need to figure out a way to coexist. And I don't believe it's the Michigan side. I could be wrong. I don't believe it's the Michigan side that's keeping it from happening. I know there's going to be a bunch of angry Spartans in the comments, but so be it. All right, that's going to do it for us for episode number 2 today. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll be back with 2 more on Monday, depending on when I get back from the NIL event, doing the photos and all of that. We'll convene with another podcast. We'll continue to talk about Big Ten Media Days as well. We'll talk NIL. We'll talk definitely a little bit about this. I really want to discuss what Jim Nagy had to say about 2 Michigan players. So if you don't know who that is, that's the director of the Senior Bowl. So let's get to that tomorrow. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again very soon. Peace.